Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video this is a somewhat of an update from the unboxing video we did on the Thermaltake Ceres 500 Snow ARGB, and yeah, just wanted to talk to you about the build process, what we've gone through, some of the pros and cons, and some of the things which I hope will be updated in the coming future, and the overall results. So let's get into it. Okay, so first of all, starting off, massive shout out to Thermaltake UK for sending the case over to us and some other bits and pieces to actually fill it out a little bit. This does seem like it's somewhat of a Thermaltake themed build, and to be honest with you, it really is. But don't let that detract you from that. I will tell you exactly the truth about all of these items. There are some pros and cons, I'll be honest with you, there really are. And the first thing, which for me has been a little bit of a kind of eye-opener, is physically how big the case is. It's kind of 21 inches tall, which is a little bit on the big side for where it's actually living at the moment. I'm not too sure if I'm going to be able to live with that long term, but certainly it looks quite impressive and it looks imposing, and hell, there's a lot of room in there to work with. So if I did want to get a slightly bigger graphics card, now that is a RTX 3060 Ti in there, and it looks absolutely dwarfed. So there's room in there for a 4090 should we wish to, and with the power supply we've got in there, which is the Thermaltake G3 1000 watt, then yeah, we've got enough juice in there so we can plug one of those in. Sadly, I couldn't use the power supply's 12 volt HP power connector on the 3060 Ti, which I kind of thought I might be able to, but it seems that the extra 4 pins on the top, the data connections, physically are blocked, so you cannot plug it in. So a little bit gutted about that, but you'll see that as we go through the build. I've done a little bit of a montage, like a time-lapse thing, so whilst I'm talking you'll probably be seeing that in the background. So I suppose we should start at the beginning. So originally we did have here the Techwear VXR case, which was kind of like one of those fish tank type cases, which has been here for a long time. I was rather fond of it, to be honest with you. So let's take one last look at that before we get into this. And yeah, she does look pretty good, but she's been around a long time, getting a bit boring, time to freshen things up a little bit, and this seemed like the ideal opportunity. So we went ahead and stripped down the VXR, took out all the bits and pieces, motherboard, the cooler, all that stuff. There was a problem with the actual VXR that it didn't really fit a 360mm radiator properly, so we had to cut out loads of chunks of metal and bits and pieces just to make it physically fit. So it was never really perfect for me, and also because of the depth of the case, there wasn't ever the opportunity to put in any decent air coolers. So if I did wanted to switch things out a little bit and get rid of the water cooling, it was really difficult, so I had to go with a really low profile cooler. At least now with the Ceres 500 we can put some seriously large CPU coolers in there without having to worry too much about it. I think we've got like 185 mils worth of depth there, so yeah, we can get some seriously large coolers going on. So anyway, that is the VXR disassembled, all the fans taken out, and actually surprisingly there are a lot of fans in there and there was an awful lot of wiring. As you've probably seen from that B-roll there, the little bit of time lapse, actually just taking the thing apart and getting all the fans out is horrendous. And also the maintenance that incurred, because there were so many fans in there, even though it did a very good job of cooling. We had the 3 fans at the bottom, drawing air up through. Anyway, you don't want to hear about all that. Let's take a look at how it went with the build, transferring all of those parts into the case. Now, just a quick run through the case. So the motherboard that we're using in here is the MSI B550 Gaming Plus. Also, when it comes to power supply, like I said, we're using the 1000 watt Tough Power G3 from Thermaltake, and also we're using the Thermaltake Liquid or Tough Liquid 360 ARGB, which we had in the previous case, so it's literally a matter of transferring it over. That is why I didn't bother taking it off, although I should have taken the CPU cooler off, because I did find when I went to put it back in, the pipes weren't quite long enough to stretch where they were. In the VXR it's fine because it was a little bit more compact, whereas with this, because we're stretching out a little bit more, there wasn't enough room with the pipes and it didn't want to swirl around. But I think actually with the pipes as they are now, I think it looks much better. There's a really nice line of the pipes going across, which you'll be seeing from close-ups very shortly. So anyway, back to the build, let's take a look at how it all went. So we started off, obviously, power supply, trying to get that in there first of all, doing some of the simpler things, and actually it was really easy to build in. There's so much room in there, even if you do mess things up, which I did, it's relatively easy to rectify. So we went through, power supply was in, I couldn't get the power supply bracket to go in how I wanted it to, so I had to spin that around 180. I don't like those brackets, I really don't. That is something which I feel could be done a little bit better. You don't have to use the bracket, you can just slot the power supply in, like I said in the unboxing. Putting the motherboard in, very simple, straightforward to do. Find the right screws, 9 screws in. The standoffs are already in the right places already, so that was absolutely fine. And I did actually do this completely in the wrong order. So then I went in and put the CPU cooler in, just to get that in there and kind of work out where things were going to go. Actually, I probably shouldn't have done that, because obviously it's going to block where you put in the connectors for the EPS connector at the top and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, even though I did do that, it was pretty straightforward, and even that EPS connector I did manage to get in there after, just by pushing it in. There was enough room in there. So pushing all the cables through, the fan cables through the back, cable managing it all up was pretty much an absolute breeze. Cable management is actually something which this has a very strong point, even though we've got a slightly reduced amount of cables than what we did in the previous build. It's all tucked away nicely, and the only thing I did find was problematic, because I bunched up all the cables for the AIO. They're kind of really long cables for the fans, so I bunched all those up, and then I found when I put the side on, it didn't want to go on properly because they were really bunched up, so I just cut the cable tie and let them hang down loose, and it was absolutely fine. I will be probably taking another look at cable management in there at a later date, once I've kind of got settled down a bit and work out what I'm going to do. I'm still not entirely sure if I'm going to change the fans out. That is potentially something I'm going to do. The tough fans, as good as they are, and as quiet as they are, they don't have a lot of RGB, as you can see. So there's this kind of dead zone at the top where there isn't a lot of RGB. So I'm very, very tempted to put in the Swafans, the Swafan 12s. They'll go on there very nicely. And I'd be interested to see how different they actually work in this setup. Something which, aside from the build and all the stuff we've done on it, getting it all together was fine. It's obviously tricky there because of how physically big it is, how heavy it is, and if I need to do any maintenance to it, taking the back door off to get into things is tricky. So yeah, that's me, nothing to do with the case. The case itself is fine. There's so much access there. Taking the 2 screws off there and there to remove this panel to gain access to your power supply or any of the cabling on this side. So if you wanted to hook up a SATA drive or I don't know, some other device, it's all really accessible. That I do like a lot, and the fact that you can just undo 2 screws there to remove this faceplate to gain access to the hard drives as well, yeah, it does make it very easy to do. I'm still not overly convinced by the turn handle here, undoing that and opening the glass out, and actually with it open you can still, weirdly it seemed quieter with the side open. It must be something to do with the air pressure, because it is extremely, and I mean extremely positively pressured at the moment with those 4 fans. You've got 1 at the back drawing out air, you've got the 3 at the top which kind of aren't pulling, well they are pushing air out but not as much because obviously it's restricted by the radiator, there's all that stuff. But those front fans, 420 mils worth of air coming into the case, and it does provide a lot of positive pressure, so maybe that's where the noise is coming from. It definitely seems quieter with the glass open for some bizarre reason. Something I don't like about the glass, which I did kind of hint at in the unboxing, is that the glass doesn't match up very well. Now you can adjust it out, there's screws on the actual hinges, but the glass, it's about 1 millimeter or 2 out at the bottom, so it just wants lifting up to go onto this little lip, so then you can turn this. It's one of those fit and finish things. Now it could be the fact that obviously this has come over from Germany, pre-review sample, before it's actually gone out at CES and been released across the markets. So potentially this could be one which is just an early sample and it'll be something that they'll fix. It's relatively easy to fix. You just kind of open the glass, bend it up a little bit, and it'll be absolutely fine, or just tweak the hinges there. But again, one of those fit and finish things. I did pick this up with some Lanley cases as well, some of the more expensive ones. So it's not unheard of, but you'd think when you're spending a sizable chunk of cash on a case, little things like that will be taken care of, but it's not the end of the world and it's only a minor thing. Something else which I do like, but I do have reservations about, is the section here. This is cool. This is cool AF. It really is. I do like this section a lot. So it's giving me a readout there of everything which is going on in the system. You can choose to have it like that on a carousel, or you can choose to have those animations, which again we showed in the unboxing, so I won't go into those in too much depth. I am going to do a full video on that for those of you that are interested, because I think it's going to be one of those things that people are going to be looking at and thinking, well, what can I actually do with it? And I felt the same, but now I know there's a lot of things you can do, a lot of things you can tweak, a lot of things you can change. So we will do a video on that. The weather section on there is good. I like having the weather on there. I would kind of like to have the weather rolled in as well, so I can rotate between the carousel and other things as well. Maybe they allow that into the software. The software at the moment is the initial release, which we've had early access to. The software will be released on the case's release date. I'm hoping they change the software in some respects. Now, this is going to be a big downside. I haven't spoken to Thermaltake about this because we're currently, well, this is New Year's Day, so not the easiest of things to do. But in my testing, I have found that with the Thermaltake software open, it is having quite a significant impact on Cinebench results, which basically means there's a software overhead. This is pretty much the case with all RGB software. There's going to be an overhead because you're telling software to do something to the LEDs and it's got to have some overhead. But it does seem that the software does have a rather significant overhead, more so than I've encountered before. So running Cinebench on this system, normally if I run it, I can get 18,181 points. That is one of those figures which I can reoccurringly get on a pretty frequent basis. But running it on the system now, I can't get that score unless I turn off the Thermaltake software, the TT Plus software. So hopefully this is just a little gremlin in the software, and it's a relatively early release, and it is something which is making me slightly hesitant about putting the SWA fans in, because the SWA fans do rely on the Thermaltake software. And the Cinebench score, I did lose somewhere in the region of about 2,000 plus points, which is actually a lot for a Cinebench run. For anyone who's run Cinebench before, even if you close something like OneDrive, which is obviously a considerable thing on the system, that's normally around 200 to 400 points. So to lose roughly 2,000 points and to do it consistently, I feel there is something not quite right going on with the software, or it needs looking at so that it isn't as heavy on the threads that it seems to be. Anyway, that's out of the way. That's hopefully going to be resolved. I'll keep you posted. Like I said, I'm going to do a follow-up video on that LCD controller. Hopefully if there's new software, then I will mention that as well. Potentially I'll pin it as well. For some people, if you're buying the case and you're not going for the LCD panel, what I've just said for the last few minutes, you can completely ignore, because it will not affect you. Because the rest of the fans in the case, which are amazing and very quiet and move a ton of air, are completely standard. So we're looking at 5V 3-pin addressable RGB, we're looking at 4-pin PWM connections and daisy chains. So literally I've only got 2 cables connecting up 4 massive fans, which are basically, you can see the white cables on the close-up. So there's 1 RGB cable at the top and there's 1 fan connector. That's it for those 4 fans, and it all works absolutely wonderfully. I'm using MSI's control sensor to control the speeds on there, and you can adjust them below their intended speed. So I've got them at the moment somewhere around about 600 to 700 RPM, but you can get them to go down considerably lower, to the point that MSI sensor says, warning, your fans may go a little bit bananas if you go beneath the desired kind of levels. But anyway, just so you know, you can get them to go super quiet. And I think overall it looks really nice. The front panel you can't quite see very well from there, which it's one of the things that, because of there isn't much depth on this counter, you can't really see it, but you're seeing it for some B-rolls. Those big fans are awesome. They do suck in an absolute ton of air and don't make a great deal of noise doing it. Something else which I've done as well, which I would recommend to you if you're having it in this sort of setup, I've taken the dust filter out of the top section just to let some of the air out a little bit quicker. It's pointless filtering air coming out of your system. It's not a vacuum cleaner, it's not a HEPA filter, so it's kind of just pointless being there. So I've taken that out, got it in the box ready to go should I ever want to change the airflow pattern. But yeah, I'm definitely I'm impressed with the case overall, I've got to say. Whether or not it's worth £160, I think that is going to be down to the individual. Where it is at the moment, for me, I think it does deserve a more dedicated desk space. Ideally somewhere over there in the corner with it facing out, so I can see it all and have it all laid out nicely. Have it on a nice angle so I can see the display and see the lights and all that kind of stuff. But that is down to our layout here. Overall, I've got to say, I'm very happy. The build was very, very simple to do, very straightforward, works very well. All the cabling, even when I messed up, was very easy to rectify. A little bit gutted that I couldn't use the 12V HP power connector on the power supply into the graphics card, but again, that is down to NVIDIA and their crazy things that they're doing with these things. So anyway, I think that is going to wrap things up. The only thing I should ever say is, in terms of temperatures, well, you can probably see what the temperatures are, so it's pointless me even telling you. Normally, well, the CPU temperature at the moment is 46 degrees Celsius, just idling. The Thermaltake software is running in the background, as is the MSI software, so there is a little bit of overhead on there. We are currently in a 25 degrees Celsius room, so it's pretty much what you would expect from a Ryzen 9 3900X, just idling with a few programs running. So in terms of air cooling performance, cannot fault it at all, does it all very well, very quietly. And I could put a much larger graphics card in there, as you can see, probably two of them side by side. There is an absolute ton of room in there. So if you're after a slightly larger mid-tower case that will border on the likes of eatx, or you want to put a massive graphics card in, then this is definitely well worth taking a look at. If you look at the other kind of alternatives on the market at the moment, you're probably looking at the Corsair, maybe the 5000 series, the Lian Lancool 3, those kinds of cases, which are going to be similar, if not more expensive. So ideally, I guess it's going to come down to your preferences, what colours you like. This is obviously available in white, which is nice because you have the side panel in white as well, but you can also get it in black should you want to. There'll be links for all that kind of stuff in the bottom of the video description, so you can check those out for you, and also the pricing, which hopefully is going to drop a little bit. I'd like to see the case come down under 150 and the LCD panel maybe come down to about 70, 75. I think that would be a much more sensible price if that is your bag and that's the sort of thing you like to see in your PC. So like I said in the unboxing video as well, if you want to know more about this case, it is going to be here for the foreseeable, at least as far as I can tell, unless it gets to the point where I think it is just a little bit too big. Let me know in the comments section. Do you think it's too big? Is it too imposing, or does it actually look pretty cool? I would genuinely like your input on this one, because at the moment, as much as I love the case, I'm still kind of thinking, is it a little bit too big for this relatively narrow, or seemingly narrow shop? I'll be very interested, and also I'm going to be interested to see how it affects the other things that go on, such as the lighting, colour temperatures and all that kind of stuff, because the colour of the background does have a difference to how the overall shot looks. So we will be taking that into consideration as well. So anyway, hopefully you've liked this video. It's a little bit different from our usual style. Hopefully it's been somewhat entertaining and slightly informative at the same time. If you've got any comments or questions, like I said, please do let us know in the comments section below. The case is going to be here for a while, so if you also want to ask questions live, we do have a live stream on a Saturday evening from 8 o'clock UK time. You're more than welcome to get involved on there, have a chat, ask any questions about the case, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. And yeah, if there's any measurements, it's quieter with the side open. I don't get it. Physics or something. Anyway, that's enough for now. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.